So if you're a fan of the series or watch my comprehensive guide on it, you'd know that there's a lot of monsters in the Godzilla series. So I had the brilliant idea to put them all on a list and do a ranking. Because I have no shame and I like to feel pain. Hurt me, Daddy.
William, you are a fool. They were calling you a dick back in '76 and...
Now, as to what monsters qualify, the monster has to have been in a Godzilla movie before. Yeah, kind of obvious, I know. But this does eliminate monsters who only appeared in video games and comics. Sorry, Obsidious, you beautiful bastard. However, that appearance has to be a legitimate appearance. If their only time being in a Godzilla film was through stock footage, it does not count. So no Gargantulas or Ghidorah. I will also not be including Dagara or Dagora because despite being in Planet of the Monsters, they show up for literally less than a second each and are glorified still images. They don't do anything. Also, yes, King Kong does count for this list since he's been in Godzilla films before, but no, Gamera and Ultraman are completely different franchises, so they don't count. Now, as far as how the ranking goes, it's obviously going to be my personal opinion, but it's generally going to be based on their design, what they do in said films, and their abilities in general. I will also be grouping species of kaiju together if they are ostensibly the same monster. So, for example, Fire Rodan and Rodan are the same character, Mothra Leo is a Mothra, Kamado-kun is literally just Godzilla as a baby. But other times when they are different enough or arguably different characters, they will be split, i.e. the Mechagodzillas. Now, as I said, I will be taking into consideration what they do in the movies, which means I'm talking about what happens in the movies. So, spoilers for every film in the franchise. More so in terms of the MonsterVerse and anime trilogy since those are still ongoing. And before I go further, for monsters on this list that appear in other non-Godzilla films, I'll try to take that in consideration too, but I haven't seen all of these films, so if I leave something out, I didn't forget, I just haven't seen the movie, so I don't really know that they did those things. And honestly, that probably wouldn't change too much in the ranking anyway. Guys, there's 42 monsters on this list. Speaking of which, yeah, there's over 40 monsters on this list, so this will be split into 2 videos. Lucky for you, that means I actually have to edit these videos in a reasonable amount of time. Now, with all that said, let's just jump right into it. So for the bottom spot, I'm starting with the boy... How do I pronounce his name? Is it Kamebus? Kamebus. His first film was the cult classic Space Amoeba, but didn't show up in a Godzilla film until 2003's Tokyo SOS. And golly, he did not leave much of an impression. It was kinda hard to do much of work when you're already fucking dead. Kamebus shows up in the film in the form of a washed-up corpse that Godzilla killed off screen. And that's it, this guy's less active than the first boss of Monster Party. At least that guy could talk. Originally it was going to be the corpse of an Anguirus, but was replaced with Kamebus because they didn't want to anger fans of Anguirus by having him killed. So they chose one they didn't think anyone would care about. Ouch. Let's move on to something only slightly less embarrassing. Mechagodzilla 4 from Sitting on the Edge of Battle and Planet of the Monsters, also known as not even in the movie. If you add all follow the Netflix trilogy, you would know that Mechagodzilla 4 shows up for 2 seconds in the background of Planet of the Monsters, and then was set to take center stage in the second film. This does not happen as he is destroyed off screen and turns into a sentient city. Weird flex, but could be interesting if it did anything to Godzilla, like have him fight an actual city, that'd be cool. But it doesn't really amount to anything at all. I mean, yeah, the only thing worse than being dead is a bunch of building blocks. Okay, well, so let's speed through some of these here. This is mostly going to be the "It's just a giant blank" section, where most of them can be summed up with "It's just a giant blank." So, first up is the giant condor from Sea Monster. Can you guess his gimmick? He's a giant condor. That's it. He also has the distinction of the worst fight in the entire series. The editing is so bad and it's so quick you can't see any of it. He just shows up partway through the film till Godzilla beats him up and he just fucks off. He shows up again in Godzilla's Revenge as stock footage, but, well, I just said it, it's stock footage, it's the exact same fight again. He would have been last place, but unlike the last 2 monsters, at least the Condor does something. After him is the giant octopus. He is a giant octopus. He first appears as an enemy in King Kong vs. Godzilla, fighting Kong early on in the film. Other giant octopi appear in War of the Gargantuas and Frankenstein Conquers the World. It's higher on the list just because octopi are inherently more interesting than birds, and the mix of puppetry with actual live octopods is pretty cool. Plus, one of them actually got eaten by the special effects team. I mean, hey, why not? Make your movie, make your dinner. It's just like the lame version of dinner in a show, am I right, boys? After these two is the Servum. These guys are basically what all the animals on Earth become after the 1,000+ years humanity left and Godzilla grew unchecked. Cool idea, but they're basically cannon fodder, and they only serve to raise the stakes for humanity. They also don't look that cool either, they're just big, black, birdy blobs. Now hey, you want to see an even worse blob? Oh god, not him! Oh god, not him! Look guys, Minya just sucks. I don't think I need to explain this at all. He's just awful. He only scores this high because at least he advances the plots of the movies he's in, and he can get some laughs for the wrong reasons. But moving on, we got Kamacuras. First appearing in Son of Godzilla, he's a giant praying mantis. He doesn't have any really cool abilities other than being a praying mantis. It's like they just took a bunch of pre-existing American B movies and turned them into kaiju. And hey, good news everyone, the next one is the exact same thing. Kumanga. He's a giant spider from the same movie. He gets brownie points for at least having a unique color scheme and a design for a spider. Kinda looks like Galvantula, a Pokemon from Gen 5. Otherwise, it's a spider. Not much to say, he's got some jumps on him. Next up is Manda. First showing up in Atragon, he makes his first Goji showing in Destroy All Monsters. You're gonna hear that a lot. He's a big snake dude. Sits on a train and swims around. His design is a pretty typical sea serpent, and he looks cool enough. I haven't seen Atragon, but he does enough in Destroy All Monsters, and his high-speed beat in Final Wars makes the opening movie pretty fun to watch. He's pretty alright, I'll give him a pass. Check this out. Next up is Varan, the only other monster besides Godzilla, Anguirus, and Kong to first appear in a black and white film. This is a monster I like the idea of more than its actual execution. His only film appearance for Godzilla was in Destroy All Monsters, and he probably has the least amount of screen time of all, appearing for mere seconds. But his design is pretty cool. Of all things, it's a mix of a reptile and a flying squirrel. It's pretty cool looking, but in terms of what he does in Destroy All Monsters, he floats a little. Down to him, best monster! Next up, we got Gorosaurus, who I believe has his fans, but he doesn't do too much for me. He only places higher than the rest because he at least does stuff in his appearances. He originated in King Kong Escapes and then showed up again a year later in Destroy All Monsters. His purpose was to be the fill-in for the generic T-Rex in King Kong. Yeah, he's a generic dinosaur, like many of the monsters we just covered here. He's a big lizard and nothing else. All the cool stuff he does is due to behind-the-scenes shenanigans, and not because of his actual intent. The Bury and Kangaroo Kick only exists for him because originally his role was going to be for Baragon. However, due to technical issues, they couldn't have Baragon fulfill that role, so they swapped it for Gorosaurus. You can even see this in some of the marketing material that refers to Gorosaurus as Baragon. How'd they fuck that one up? Bruh. And the last monster in this block of the list is Ebera. A monster who was lower on this list for a while, but then I warmed up to him recently, mostly because I have a figure of him now. Now, you might be looking at it and thinking, "Aye, is that a damn jumbo shrimp?" To which I reply, literally yes. But he earns points because, despite being just a giant lobster, his design is pretty cool for what it is. It follows the basic idea of Godzilla and Kumanga. Take something familiar like a shrimp and exaggerate it. Give him spikes and stuff. Makes him easy to identify as a monster, but recognizable as the source creature. It's like a Pokemon! Though his abilities are still kinda lame, as in his abilities are being a giant lobster, he's got claws, look out. So crabs is more threatening.
Well, these claws ain't for just attracting mates!
He's the only main kaiju to be taken down in a direct fight with humans, Oxygen Destroyer notwithstanding. Alright, did you get all that? Because that was 41 to 30. You good? Great! Next up is the triple threat of Baby Godzilla, Little Godzilla, and Godzilla Jr. I like the first two forms more than Minya on design alone, and Godzilla Jr. actually looks like Godzilla and actually contributes in the fight against Destroyer. That puts him up a decent amount right there. Sure, you can argue Gorosaurus did more than him, but I'd rather have the plushie of this guy more than this guy, sorry. Next on the chopping block are some American kaiju. That's right, we got the Mutos from G14. Also known as the Cloverfield monster, again! I've also heard some people comparing them to Orga, who we'll get to later. Which is funny because Orga's face was allegedly molded after Zilla, the '98 version of Godzilla, who was also an American creation. The design is cool enough, I guess, it just seems generic and not quite Godzilla to me. They are pretty small and pull off some pretty good attacks on Godzilla, so that helps. They have a very impressive size, I like how their eyes just kind of glow. And of course the female Muto has the best death scene in the series. Number 27, we got Mogira, a robotic creation that first showed up in the Toho sci-fi film The Mysterians, which had no connection to Godzilla at all. Though that didn't stop him from putting him in the NES game, it wasn't until 1994 he entered the Godzilla series proper, and yep, he's just a bootleg Mechagodzilla. Literally made from the scraps of Mechagodzilla from the previous movie. I just love how dopey Mogira looks, like a giant mole robot. You really expect this thing to kill Godzilla? He's got some pretty impressive projectile moves, and despite how fragile he is, he can fuck you up with those drill arms and missiles. Don't underestimate him. And lastly, before we start the proper countdown, we got Gabara.
Stop, don't come back.
Okay, so you know what I just said about liking Mogira just for how stupid he looks? Yeah, that carries over to Gabara. He shows up in the worst film ever and beats the shit out of the worst thing ever with Thunder Punch. He only places this high because his design is unique, but you know, we don't see too many electrical monsters for some reason. And again, he beats a Minya, and the fight they have with him is the wackiest thing you will ever witness.
Godzilla versus his enemies of destruction, the king of all monsters, against the baddest beasts of all time, Rodan, Mothra, Ghidra, Mecha-Ghidra, and Mecha-Godzilla.
Well, we made it this far, it's time for the top 25 kaiju in the series. According to this guy. I wouldn't trust him. So for number 25, I have Megaguirus. Her history is kinda interesting. It revolves around the Meganulon, the insects from the original Rodan. In that film, they're human-sized bug monsters. The Queen Meganulon mutates into Megaguirus after absorbing some Godzilla DNA. Take a shot every time I mention Godzilla DNA in these two videos. It comes up more times than you think. Of all the flying bug monsters in the series, Megaguirus is the most middle of them to me. I mean, her design is cool enough, but she's held back from me just because her movie is on the lesser side. But she does have some really cool abilities. She's one of the fastest monsters in the series. She can use that stinger thingamajig on her tail to suck energy from an opponent and use it to power her own blasts. And obviously she has those stabby pincers for arms. Always a benefit. And at the end of the day, she goes down relatively quickly after a belly flop into atomic blasts. Next. Keeping up with the insect theme is Batra, the anti-Mothra. They set Batra up as a villainous moth, an evil version of Mothra, which is kinda true in terms of humanity, but in reality, Batra is more just a neutral force. She cares about the Earth itself, not so much the humans living on the Earth. If they get in her way or damaging Earth too much, she'll awaken to exterminate them and bring back the balance. Like Mothra, she has two forms, a larval form and a imago form, and both forms, for a big bug, look really cool. I like the part where she slams a Ferris wheel into Godzilla. Oh, that's iconic. Batra is capable more in its larval stage, sprouting a horn it can use to attack and shoot beams from, and purple eye beams, way more than a Mothra larva can do. While in imago form, Batra can't do horn stuff anymore. But all the beams it does have are much stronger, and obviously, you know, flight is always a big plus. And now for the part you've all been waiting for. Alright. Go get your hands off that dislike button. Canonically speaking, the Godzilla in the '98 film has been rebranded as a separate monster altogether known as Zilla. I'm somewhat of a Zilla apologist. I think the film itself is just not worth getting worked up about. Just not really a good Godzilla film. but a pretty standard monster movie. It's fine. And Zilla himself is a pretty alright monster in my eyes. Usually the big bipedal monsters tend to be slower grandpa types. Oh, I'ma smash that Tokyo, don't you worry, Sonny. Arthritis. But Zilla here just goes straight up. He can straight up climb buildings. That's something we usually only see from Kong and flying monsters. He's quick and nimble when he needs to be. I mean, just take Gorosaurus and dial it up to 11. Sure, if you treat him as an incarnation of Godzilla himself, yeah, he fucking sucks. But as his own monster, Zilla is pretty cool. And guys, 1998 was 20 years ago. Get over it. Hey, I don't know about you, but we're at 22.
I don't get it.
Up next is Baragon. I like him because he looks like a dragon puppy. That's the only reason I need, right? Okay, next. Okay, for 21 we have... Okay, fine, I'll talk about Baragon. He first showed up in Frankenstein Conquers the World as the opponent and main antagonist against Frankenstein. Yes, he fought the Frankenstein monster. This is a thing that exists. And showed up in Godzilla and Destroy All Monsters. Are you noticing a pattern? He appeared once again in 2001's GMK, which you know from my Godzilla Guide video, that's my favorite film in the series, so that definitely carries him in my eyes. He kinda dies like a bitch though, acting as a meat show while Mothra and Ghidorah wake up. He can burrow, jump kick, and breathe fire. Good stuff. He's a solid monster. At least until he's not a solid anymore. Okay, for 21, we have what happens when the Easter Bunny studies at Bruce Lee's dojo. King Caesar shows up in the first Mechagodzilla film, and he came back in 2004's Final Wars. He's basically a kaiju martial artist. He's got kicks, he's got punches. He does the most work in the fight at Mount Fuji. Not much needs to be said, he's an effective monster. Plus, he's got a theme song. Theme song that sucks and costs some points. Next. Okay, number 20. Making progress. We got the dual monster of Monster X and Kaiser Ghidorah. Let's start with X. No, this X. Actually, that works too. Monster X from a design standpoint is a crazy kaiju love child of Dr. Wily and Nomura. Sans zippers. God, that's gonna confuse me so much when I'm editing this. It's like a 2007 Hot Topics monster dream come true. He himself isn't too interesting past the design, though. Granted, for this list, if you couldn't tell, the design matters first and foremost here. Film is a visual media after all, and without visuals, what the fuck am I doing? His abilities are pretty standard. That is until Gigan and Mothra are out of the picture and the final fight begins. Monster X turns into a Ghidorah variation known as Kaiser. Look at this absolute unit. This is the most intimidating Ghidorah form out of all of them. It has 4 legs instead of the usual 2. He's a royal gold and black combo, and if it wasn't for the humans helping out, he would have killed Godzilla outright. Kaiser is a massive wall and a fitting final boss for Godzilla to fight in his last film. Well, for what was his last film until America realized, oh yeah, we can make money off of this. I've said it before in the Godzilla Guide, most of the Western world who aren't G-fans are more familiar with the silly, lighthearted films of the late 60s and 70s. The film that embodies that tone the most is 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon, which introduced 2 monsters, the size-changing robot Jet Jaguar and the big bad beetle Lord Megalon. For this spot on the list, I'm going with Megalon, the titular foe himself. Megalon was born out of multiple factors, the first of which being that by 1973 the series was firmly rooted in the child-geared matinee style, so getting another giant bug monster just made sense. Another factor were the budgets of the films getting smaller as they went on, so for a lot of the action scenes they had to use stock footage of past films. They designed Megalon in a way that would allow them to do that. His main effect is the same as King Ghidorah's, and they gave him drill arms just so he'd be able to chop through stuff like Gigan. There's even one shot where you can still see Gigan's claw in frame, which gets even funnier because Gigan himself shows up in the movie. Plus, the beetle design means the suit itself won't be as complicated, not much hanging off of it, it's pretty simple. But enough of the design philosophy behind a giant bug man. What does he do? Well, I already mentioned he has a beam effect that shoots out of his horn. He has drill arms, I don't think I need to explain what a drill can do. And he's got these molten hot bomb things he spits out of his mouth. Good stuff, I like it. Way better showing than most of the other bug monsters who are basically just Mothra again, but this time they're evil. Speaking of Mothra, We're not talking about her yet. Next is Anguirus. The first opponent Godzilla ever faced way back in 1955. He's allegedly based on the Ankylosaurus. But let's not mince words here, he is a damn armadillo. Commonly referred to as a kaiju with a heart of gold, and as Godzilla's best friend besides the one time he tried to kill him. He's as classic as you can get. Anguirus can roll around as a giant spike ball of death. He has claws to dig into you, and a big boy chomp that leaves a mark. Where he loses points for me is that he's kind of a, complete loser. He never wins. He dies in the first film he shows up in, he gets dropped from the sky and destroy all monsters, he gets his head basically torn to shreds in Gigan, and debatably dies again in Mechagodzilla. He's a fan favorite, but the films sure don't respect him too much when you really think about it. Again, they almost used him as a corpse once. Also, he loses points here because basically nobody can agree on how to pronounce his name. Good God, guys, just pick one. Hey, you hear that? That's the sound of failure. No, really, his movie failed. What the fuck? Titanosaurus is the last monster created during the Showa era, and just by looking at him, you can kind of see the series had one foot out the door already. Titanosaurus is basically what happens when you take the classic-style monster designs and mash up with the 70s style. Across it, they're restrained and goofy. He's a form of dinosaur just like Godzilla and Rodan were, but more zany with brighter colors and more out-there features. He has fins on his body, he's more serpentine, and of course he's a water-dwelling beast just like Godzilla. And his roar is just perfect. And despite being an aquatic beast, his special power is a wind attack. Odd choice. While he is mind-controlled for most of his film, he can get downright sadistic. I mean, he dances on Godzilla's grave. You can't beat that. For how dumb this guy is, I can't help but like him. Plus, Terror Mechagodzilla was, as far as I remember, the first film in the series I really watched, so that probably has something to do with it. We are now at number 16. So for the last monster in this video, we are looking at Mechagodzilla 2. The Heisei Mechagodzilla and the first Mechagodzilla to be built by humans as an anti-Godzilla weapon, which happens a lot more than you think. Yeah, only the 70s Mechagodzilla is actually a bad guy, all the others are military tools. His design is based on the Heisei Godzilla and looks more realistic, like this is almost something that could actually exist. While he is my least favorite of the three core Mechagodzillas, he was probably the most successful one, almost killing Godzilla completely if it wasn't for Rodan's 11th hour sacrifice. He has all the weapons you'd need and can combine with Garuda to double his firepower. The original plan for him was to essentially be a Voltron, having 3 different vehicles combining and forming into him, which would have been amazing. His face is a bit dopey, but it's recognizable as a metal Godzilla, and he gets results, I have to respect that. Plus, I do really like his theme song. So that's gonna wrap it up for part 1. When we come back, we'll have my top 15 favorite monsters in the series. This is where we're gonna get some of the big hitters. Remember to subscribe if you want to see that one right when it comes out. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated. Also join my Discord and check out my Redbubble if you feel like wasting money. See you later.
William, you are a fool. They were calling you a dick back in '76 and you haven't done anything new since. You nuisance with no sense. You will die of irrelevance. Go ahead, you can call me the devil. You aspire to my level. You aspire to malevolence. Say hi to the Jeffersons and the spies all around me. Maybe they can confirm. I don't care if I kill my career with one. Hold on.